Shaw here, Wall Street Mastermind. I'm excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. And today we have Brandon on with us. And Brandon is a rising junior who's been, I guess at this point, been with us for just about a year. Although he got
close to a year.
although he got his offer, I guess a month or two ago. So he's been on a journey, and he was able to actually get an offer from just like go straight to the buy side to private equity. So that's pretty unique, and so I wanted to get him on here to talk to you guys about his process and how he ended up there and what he did along the way to set himself up for success. And hopefully this will be insightful for you guys, especially those of you who maybe are also thinking about recruiting for the buy side. So with that said, Brandon, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. And if you don't mind, maybe just starting off by introducing yourself real quick and just kind of give our audience a little bit about your background and kind of who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on, Sam. Like you said, I'm Brandon, incoming junior at a semi-target, and my school definitely has a presence in IB and PE, but it's nothing huge. Maybe 5 or 6 notable banks kind of recruited at my school. So I would say it was definitely easier recruiting than going to a non-target, but not the same infrastructure as kind of the Ivies have. In terms of my process, like Sam said, I've been in Wall Street Mastermind for about a year, and I was really lucky to have my parents be so supportive and generous to kind of put down the money. And one thing I'll say is like it definitely seems like such a big investment on the front end before you join the community. But once you get the offer, I mean, your whole perspective changes once you see that offer letter and like kind of see that base salary. The investment seems a lot smaller now on this side. And yeah, this summer I'm doing M&A at a Big Four firm. So kind of really excited to get the M&A experience this summer and PE next summer. And see which I like better, and maybe re-recruit. I'm not really sure what's going to happen in the future, but it's really all just about getting the offer for your junior summer. Get the best offer you can.
Yeah, cool. So I guess this summer, which is your sophomore summer, like you said, you're doing M&A at a Big Four firm, which is, I think that's pretty awesome for a sophomore. And then next summer, more importantly, which is your junior summer, you're working at this PE firm. Like, what can you tell us about this PE firm, I guess? Like, what kind of investments do they focus on? Or, I don't know, how big is the firm, or where are they located? Like, I mean, whatever you can tell us.
Yeah. I'd rather not say the firm's name, but it's located in Atlanta. It's a pretty small firm, around 100 headcount, and the firm specializes in like consumer, which I think is really interesting. And the interview process was actually a little unique. So the super day was like 2 behaviorals, 1 technical, which is standard, and then the last interview was like a data book interview. So they gave me this data book of this company that they own with the financials from 2016, and just asked me a bunch of questions about how I would go about analyzing the data as an investor before the acquisition, and then after, how like I would go about managing the growth of this company. And that interview, I was obviously already interested in the company because I was interviewing there. But that interview was really, really interesting because it was more collaborative than just grilling me. They were also teaching me, which was really interesting to kind of learn how they think about their investments and their holding strategy once they own the company.
Gotcha. Okay. And by the way, I mean, just for our audience's sake, I guess, because I'm just looking at the firm's website, but I know you said it's like a small firm. For context, just so people know, like relative to like investment banks, most private equity firms have like much smaller headcount. And so actually the fact that your firm has, what do you say, like 100 plus people or whatever, I actually think that's like pretty decently sized. Like, um,
Hmm.
I actually typically go more by like assets under management, and it looks like they manage like tens of billions of dollars. So that's like actually a pretty sizable fund. So that's pretty awesome. Um,
Hmm.
but okay, so they're consumer focused, private equity firm, and it got 100 plus billion dollars. Sorry, 100 plus people, not 100 plus billion dollars, 100 plus people on the firm. So it's a sizable firm. That's great. So I guess like let's talk about your journey, right? Like in terms of how you got to this point. If we go all the way back to the beginning, because you didn't join Wall Street Mastermind until summer after freshman year, right?
Right.
So were you already doing a bunch of stuff on your own during your freshman year, like prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind, or was Wall Street Mastermind kind of like the first time when you really, started prepping for recruiting?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I actually wasn't really doing anything. I'd say, you know, early on in freshman year, coming in with kind of a general business interest, to college, I was, trying to learn a lot. And one of my older mentors, and also my brother, he went to a different school, but they were both going through the banking process, and just kind of had an eye over their shoulder the whole time. But in terms of my actual preparation, I didn't. I really didn't decide I wanted to go full sprint on banking recruiting until, like, the start of the summer, and I'd say that was a month before I joined Wall Street Mastermind. Um, like I said, my parents were super happy to help with that, and we had a lot of conversations about it, but kind of figured, like, if you're gonna do it, go all out. Um, and yeah, I'd say, like, if you're debating doing Wall Street Mastermind, I think the the best move is definitely to do it like as soon as possible, because just the way that the modules are laid out, it's in such a great order, and very very concise, and, like, a lot of those guys, it takes way like it, it's just not worth the hassle of trying to find your own information. And like, you can find it with technicals online, but especially the value that I got from networking and behavioral modules, I'd say is pretty unique for Wall Street Mastermind.
Got it. Okay. So that's really great feedback, but I guess you hadn't really done too much yet prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind. Then you decided to, okay, like commit to recruiting for banking, right? And then you came across Wall Street Mastermind, you started looking into it, obviously had to talk to your parents about it. Sounds like your parents are super supportive, which is cool because we know that not all parents are like that. Um,
Mhm.
was like, were there any doubts like when you and your parents were debating whether to join Wall Street Mastermind or not? Like, in terms of like making that decision, was it like really just like super easy? It was like, oh yeah, sure, let's do it. Or was it like, hey, like, I don't know, kind of skeptical, not sure if this is legit or not, and then like, just kind of help us understand your, um, I guess your decision making process. Like, did you guys have to have a lot of conversations about it? Did you have to like convince them a lot, or like was it like pretty easy?
Yeah, there definitely was skepticism in the program. Just because you don't know what it is, it costs a lot of money. There's also people out there that bash Sam online. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, like all those
there
things
sure are.
considered, like, yeah, yeah. No, but yeah, like all those things considered, it definitely was a long conversation. And you know, ultimately, like I said, we decided to, go full sprint with it. Um, but I think, having the client call was definitely helpful. Just to hear Sam like kind of put his money where his mouth is. Because you can read everything online, but until you actually, talk to the guy who runs the show, um, it it's a little different. So that's something I'd recommend. Just take a client call if you're kind of debating it, or you think it's a scam or whatever. You may read online. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Got it. Okay. So basically, long story short, naturally you had some amount of skepticism, especially given everything that's being said online and whatever, and you read all that. But the way you overcame that was by just going to the source and doing your own due diligence and talking to me, talking to just our company in general, and figuring out like, hey, whether this seems real or not, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. And I think like, I mean, that's like a pretty important quality to have in this day and age, which is like the ability to discern for yourself what's real and what's not, right? Like the ability to
Hmm.
think critically and evaluate all the evidence that's before you to see like, okay, there are two sides saying like completely opposite things, which by the way, in the world that we live in, that's like almost always true. Like Republicans, Democrats, like everybody says like the other side is lying, right? And so like the ability to like suss all that out and really get to the bottom of what the truth is, I think is like, I mean, not just with like deciding whether to join Wall Street Management, but I think like just in terms of like useful life skills, I think it's like really, really important, right? Because that's ultimately what allows you to either make good decisions or make bad decisions, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Um, so then you join Wall Street Mastermind, and so like, I mean, how long has it been since you got your offer? Because we're like end of June now. You had your offer probably what, like a month ago, right?
Yeah, a little like a month, probably 5 weeks.
Okay. So like walk us through the last, let's call it 11 months, which is kind of like from when you joined Wall Street Mastermind until you got your offer. Like, what was that journey like? Like, what were some of the things that you did inside of the program, and like what did you find to be most helpful? Or like you, for example, you mentioned earlier like a lot of networking and behavioral module stuff that you felt you learned was very unique and not stuff that you could find outside of the program, right? So like
Hmm.
what did you mean by that? Because like we always get questions from people are like, what's the difference if I do this versus if I just do it on my own? Like I should be able to just figure everything out on my own, right? Like, what are you guys doing that's so special? Like, how would you answer that?
Hmm. Yeah, I think one thing that I see after going through the process is honestly how important networking is. The only interviews I got were interviews that I networked for, or if they recruited right at my school. And I probably interviewed with 5 or 6 firms. Two of them recruited my school. So I applied to like 30 plus firms, and struck out with all the ones that I didn't network hard enough with. So I think that's easily my biggest takeaway from recruiting is how important networking is. And you know the modules, I'd say it's super helpful with both like your targeting process in networking and the actual calls. So what I mean by that is, you know, in the beginning, I, before I went through the whole modules, I had a couple of calls with, like people at random firms that, like went to my high school, but like I think in the beginning, I was too obsessed with how warm the contact is with. Um, and I think your first priority in networking has to be like, is it the firm that I want? Is it the location that I want? The group that I want? Um, and from there you can try to find your best connection. But you'd be surprised how many cold contacts out there are willing to take your call. So I think the targeting process Wall Street Mastermind really helped with. And then on the call, I think the script that Sam provides just makes for a more interesting conversation, and kind of I don't want to say like schemes it to get like a referral, but like he knows what to do. Like some of my friends who are recruiting or who went through recruiting with me, like on their calls, they'll be like, oh, like what's your favorite part of the day? Like, or like, what's the best part about investment banking? Just really general questions that don't really, like form a connection and don't really, peel back the layers of what you're actually trying to understand. And, I think Sam poses, a lot more interesting questions, and kind of the structure that he lays out, his suggested script for networking calls, really works. And like, I'm not going to say that like my networking was the best. Like, I think in total I talked to like 70 bankers, which over 11 months could have definitely been higher. And, I'd say only, 5-10% of those calls turned to like referrals. And, maybe 30% got interest. Like networking is really hard. And but I think like I said, like if you can do everything to put yourself in the best position, why not do it as long as you can? And so I would definitely say, the modules with Sam's help really helped with networking.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really helpful. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Networking is really hard, and a lot of people have to do like really crazy numbers just to get like even a single referral, right? And so at the end of the day, it's all about how can you improve your conversion rate so that you don't have to talk to as many people to
Mhm,
still get to the same number of referrals, right? And so
mhm.
sounds like you spoke to 70 bankers in an 11-month period, which yeah, I definitely agree. Probably could have done more, but I'm sure you were busy with a lot of stuff. But as you mentioned, you ended up getting what, 5 or 6 interviews in the end, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I would say that's actually like a pretty good ratio, to be honest. And so that's great. And like, not every, for most people, not every interview you get is going to turn into an offer either. So then like on the interview side of things, it's also like you got to try to get as many interviews as you can. And then in the end, like all you really need is one offer, right?
Yeah.
Um, so then like speaking of the interview process, then like what about, so we talked about networking, like what about like the interview prep side of things? Like what did you find to be most helpful on that end? Like whether it's behavioral prep, technical prep, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I'd say the whole package. First of all, behaviorals. The way Sam kind of breaks it down is really easy to think about. And you only really need to, get down, your background, like your school, like why do you choose your major, your finance interests, and then obviously there are more questions, but one of the most important things is just getting like 5 or 6 really good stories. And I think the story collection process was definitely easier with Wall Street Mastermind's modules and Sam's help. And I think that's one of the biggest parts, because anyone can study technicals and pass an interview, but all these firms nowadays are looking for fit. And as long as you can come across as a nice person that is willing to work hard and fits in with the culture, then you'll be attractive to firms. So I'd say the behaviorals was definitely helpful. Wall Street Mastermind, as were the technicals. Like I said before, like I went through the M&I and the Wall Street prep guides, in addition to Wall Street Mastermind, and those are super helpful. But I think the way that Sam teaches the technicals, you get a much greater conceptual understanding of kind of the mechanisms of I guess like finance, And that's opposed to the guides kind of just Q&Aing. And like it's one thing to just be able to recite the answer to questions that are memorized, but it's another thing to really understand, and that comes across to interviewers. And plenty of bankers told me that in my networking with them, that like it's really important to understand the concepts and not just be uh, I don't know, or a parrot, I guess, like repeating the answer straight from the guides. Also, because most of the interviewers nowadays are trying to get tricky, because they know everyone goes on the guides and everyone has the basics memorized, so they're trying to really peel back the onion and see, does this kid know what he's talking about. So I'd say in that way, the modules that Sam has for the technicals were super helpful.
Got it. Okay. Um, excuse me. That's really helpful, man. So did you find that, because obviously ultimately the offer that you got was for private equity, right? So sometimes like the questions that we get from some people that are interested in private equity is like, well, this program mostly focuses on investment banking recruiting, right? So like, if I want to recruit for private equity, can this program still help me? So like, in your experience, because obviously you recruited for both investment banking and private equity, right? And so, like, how similar or different are those two processes? And like, how much was the Wall Street Mastermind program able to prepare you for the private equity recruiting process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say in terms of PE firms that recruit at undergrad, it's very similar. Not the same, but very similar. Like I said, one of my interviews in the Super Day was a data book interview, and that's something you can't really compare or prepare for, other than like reading articles about how PE firms tend to go about their investments and expansion. But besides that, like it's really similar. The networking and the behaviorals is the exact same. And in terms of the technicals, I'd say like you're more likely to get you're way more likely to get an LBO question than you're probably not going to get a merger model in a PE interview. But I only had one technical interview for the PE firm, because the first round was strictly behavioral, and then only one was like like technical questions in the Super Day. So I don't have too much experience with the technicals for PE. That interview wasn't super complex. But yeah, I'd say in general, like very similar. There's a ton of overlap between banking and PE.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Yeah, and that's kind of like consistent with what we've seen for our other clients that have interviewed for the buy side too. Is like, at the undergrad level, if you're just recruiting for summer analysts or analyst positions at these PE firms, it's pretty much the expectations are kind of the same as if you were recruiting for like a banking analyst or summer analyst position. But like, if you're recruiting for buy side at the associate level, which is typically like the positions you would get after you've done 2 years of banking, then like the expectation would be a lot higher, and the degree of difficulty would be higher too, because at that point they're kind of assuming that anyone who's recruiting for those have already done banking, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that makes sense. So I guess uh like, we've talked about networking, we talked about behaviorals, we talked about technical. So it seems like it kind of helped you across the board in all these different aspects. um was there anything else about Wall Street Mastermind that you felt like is like made the recruiting process different than, say, like if you were to just like go through this on your own and try to figure everything on your own, like any other aspects of the program or the community or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One big thing that I was excited about joining the program is the access to Sam one-on-one. And I was a lot less hands-on than I'm sure some clients are. Like I think we only met one-on-one a few times throughout the process, but that was really only just because I found the modules like so in depth and like kind of just answered my questions on its own, which is great. But just having the ability to text Sam and sometime within the upcoming week he'll have availability for you is really nice. And the second thing is the community. Um, it's pretty amazing. I haven't, except for this one other kid at my school, I haven't met anyone in person from Wall Street Mastermind, but I can send a question in, the technical questions channel or the behaviorals or whatever it may be, and someone from around the world is going to answer that question. So I think it's pretty amazing, and it's a community that you don't have unless you go to a school where you have an investment banking club or some sort of support system built into your school. And even then, I find, because I have that at my school I was part of, I find that the people in Wall Street Mastermind are a lot more engaged and willing to help each other, which I think is pretty amazing because, like I said, we've never met in person.
Got it. So you're saying, obviously, most schools have like some sort of finance or IB club already, and obviously, you should all join whatever club is available at your school. And all of our students should only join the clubs that are at their schools. But you just think
Absolutely.
that relative to the kind of help you could get from the club on campus, you found that the people in Wall Street Mastermind were actually even more engaged and more helpful and more collaborative.
Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of value from my club as well, and I think the more perspectives you can hear throughout the process, the better. Like, also I did this like Wall Street prep technical workshop, like 7-hour workshop. They came to my school, and even that, like I picked up something that I didn't pick up from Sam's modules. So like, just hearing people explain things in different ways is super important. But at the end of the day, I'd say like 95% of the stuff that I learned on how to go about recruitment was from Sam and his modules. So I think definitely it all comes back to the investment that you have to put up, but I think it's safe to say that it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I guess one last question for you, which is I always like to end on this question, but um, like what's one piece of advice that you have for people who are, because now that you're on the other side, you're done with the recruiting process, you have to offer for people that are still going through it. Is there like a specific piece of advice that you just found to be really helpful for yourself that maybe you want to like pass on to other people? Like, is there anything like that?
Mhm. Yeah, I'd say two things. I'd say one, once you commit to doing this process, I would do as much due diligence about the firms out there as you can, and really try to understand where you want to end up, because that just makes the process so much easier when you have the end goal more clear in mind. Um, I for so many months in this process just kind of I obviously knew about bulge brackets and boutiques, but I didn't really know like each specific firm other than some exceptions. And I think that just helps in so many ways. It makes your process more targeted on where you really want to focus networking. And when it comes time to interview, it's just so much easier because you're not looking up the firm a week before the interview. You've been in touch with them and what they do and what their culture is like from the beginning. So that's one. And then two is just don't put off the technicals. This is something that I kind of did. I didn't really start technicals until like really sit down and start until like end of winter break. So near January, and for when you're interviewing in March, it's just that's enough time. But I know those early interviews, I was still, a little caught off guard by some questions, and not as polished as I was in May, after 4 months. And part of that was because I actually broke my ankle in February, and I had to have surgery, the whole thing, and so I was kind of out of commission for at least a week, and even after that, it was tough to kind of stay on my same schedule with crutches and everything. So that's just to say, like, life happens, and you don't know what can happen, but you can control when you start something. And the difference in my
No, I think we might have lost Brandon temporarily, hopefully.
that
Oh, I guess you're back. Can you hear us?
oh, sorry, did I cut off?
Just for a little bit, but no, you guys, you kind of said you don't know what's going to happen, but you can control when you start something, and then we kind of lost you after that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying, you can control when you start, and you know, like I said, I had some interviews in March, and it's always kind of in the back of my mind, like if I started the technicals before winter break or at the start of winter break, maybe I would have advanced in those processes. So, I wouldn't say that's a regret. I try not to have regrets, and I'm very happy with my outcome here, but that's definitely one thing I would say. Like, it's never too early to start, and like I was kind of worried that this was foolish looking back on it, but I was kind of worried that like the technical knowledge would be harder to understand with the behaviorals, or like I lose touch with my stories, like that was just like completely foolish. It's like just you know once you have the behaviorals down and you mock a couple of times, like it gets so much easier to talk about yourself and tell these stories. The technicals, just a whole different ball game. There's a lot to learn, and I underestimated how easy it would be, just because I kind of thought, again, foolishly, that like I'm good with numbers, I like business, I'll be fine. And the technicals has nothing to do with numbers, like other than some mental math. It's really all conceptual, and I didn't really have a good picture of what these questions would be before I started. And that's why I needed to start earlier.
Got it. Okay. That's really great advice, man. So, I mean, it's kind of the same as what we always tell people, which is literally for investment banking, recruiting, and even buy side recruiting, there is no such thing as starting too early. Like, you can never start too early, literally, because
Mhm.
there's just so much to do. There's so much to learn. If you want to become like one of the most, like, you're basically, your goal is to become one of the most competitive candidates out there, right? You think about these
Mhm.
firms, they get so many applications, like the top investment banks accept between 1 and 3% of their applicant pool. Like Goldman
Mhm.
Sachs accepted 1.5% of their of their applicants for internship last year, right? Like, so like
Yeah.
when the margins are that thin, um, like I've just never met a single person. Like, we've worked with over 500 students at this point in the program, and I've never met a single student that said, oh, like, yeah, I think I started a little bit too early, I could have started later. Like, everybody always says the same thing that you're saying, which is, you can never start too early, I wish I started earlier. Right. And so
Right.
yeah, like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, life happens, sometimes it throws you a curveball, you get an injury, whatever, you're out of commission, so you never know. So you can't plan for that stuff, but the only way to plan for it is like to build in as much buffer as possible, so that if something like that does happen, you're not just gonna get totally destroyed, right? So
Mhm. Absolutely.
it's really great advice, man. For those of you that are still listening and still with us here, if you find yourself in a similar situation, right? Maybe you go to a semi-target school. Maybe you have some resources at school, but it's not a lot. Maybe you have some people around you that are also trying to recruit, but like they're not like, I mean, it is a competitive process, and at the end of the day, like, people are kind of looking out for themselves. So maybe the people are not as helpful as you were hoping they would be. And maybe you just like know that, hey, this is your career and it's important and you want to put your best foot forward. You don't want to take any chances with it. Whatever the case may be, if that sounds like you, like I want to encourage you to reach out to our team and see if we can help you. Okay. Like typically what will happen first if you decide to book a call with us is we'll actually set you up with one of our alumni first, which basically like is an upperclassman that's already successfully gone through the recruiting process, has got an offer from a top firm, and you can just have like a free virtual coffee chat with them. Ask them whatever you want about the recruiting process. Ask them for advice. Ask them about you can ask them about the program if you want. Like ask them whatever, right? And at the end of that conversation, if you feel like, hey, you still want to explore this further, you want to potentially work with us, then our alumni can help set you up for a follow-up call with our team and we can discuss that further. All right. And if after the conversation you decide, actually, no, this is not for me, this is not what I want to do, then hey, no harm, no foul. Like our alumni don't care. They're already done with recruiting. Like in that case, you just treat it like a free networking call where you got some recruiting advice out of it. Right. So if that sounds like of interest to you, then you can go and book this call at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you. All right. With that said, Brandon, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us today. I know that it's super early in the morning where you're at, and so thank you for waking up early to do this
Hmm.
before you go to your internship. And I just want to congratulate you again on such an amazing outcome. And obviously, it's probably feels like such a long journey for you over the past year, but you just really stuck with it and did put in all the work and was able to get the outcome that you got. So I'm super proud of you and can't wait to see what you accomplish at your summer internship next year, man.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the time, Sam. And yeah, really appreciate those words. And yeah, it's all worth it once you get the offer.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time, we'll talk soon. All right.